Hello everyone, welcome to another video. My name is Mario So, and in today's video we'll be talking about this budget-friendly zoom wide lens. I hope you're all doing well and welcome to another video. If you're already subscribed, thanks again for being here. If you're new here, I create weekly content on filmmaking, photography, gear review, and editing tutorials. And if that's something you think you'll be into, don't forget to leave a like and a subscribe to be in the know of what videos I'll be up to next. So today we'll be talking about this Tamron 17 to 28mm f2.8 lens, which is a wide, fast zoom lens for Sony E-mount full frame cameras. This is a full frame E-mount lens for Sony, but if you were to use it on a APS-C camera like the a6400 or the a6600 or even the a6500, you will get a focal length equivalent of about 25 to 42mm, which wouldn't be as wide as you might want it to be, but it would be an option if you wanted to get a fast aperture zoom lens for your APS-C camera. So this Tamron lens was available about July of 2019, and when it came out, it sold very hot as well compared to its big brother, the 28 to 75 f2.8. This is a wide lens that goes all the way from 17mm to 28mm. It's a very unusual focal length, but just like its big brother medium to telephoto lens, 28 to 75, it's a weird focal length, but I guess they just wanted to keep it the same. And recently, Tamron also came out with the eldest brother, or the biggest brother, the third brother, the Tamron 78 to 180. And you have the lineup of all the three Tamron lenses. That's pretty much all the entire focal length that you will need for most 90% of your shooting needs. If you haven't watched my review of the bigger brother of this lens, the Tamron 28 to 75, you can check it out here. So I've been using this Tamron lens for about a year now, and I feel like it's a very solid choice compared to the next alternative for Sony E-mount cameras, which would be the Sony 16 to 35 G-Master lens. Like the G-Master lens, this is also an f2.8 aperture lens, and this aperture is constant in the entire focal range. What makes this lens stand out compared to the Sony G-Master is its price. At $899 compared to the $2,000 mark of the G-Master, this is a very budget-friendly alternative. So I'll be talking about some of the things that are good with this lens and why I think it's such a good bargain lens. This lens has a constant aperture of f2.8. That means that the aperture does not change as you zoom in into different focal lengths, which makes this lens fast and good in low light. Having a constant aperture in a budget-friendly lens is very difficult to find because many of the budget alternatives have a variable aperture, meaning that the aperture changes as you zoom in. For a period of time, I really like shooting at the medium to telephoto focal length because I really like that compression and that separation from the background that the subject would get, giving you very nice bokeh and very nice blurry backgrounds. But having shot for about a year with this lens, I can say that I'm starting to fall in love more and more with that wide angle lens look. So wide angle lenses are very good for architecture, street photography, wide landscape shots, and anything where you would like to capture the entire scenery. So wide lenses are good because they push away the background to appear to be further than what it actually is. So if you're in a smaller space, wide angle lenses come in very handy. Wide angle lenses are not so great for portraits because sometimes they give you a very distorted look, but when used creatively, they can create pretty cool results, whether for video or photos. Let's talk about the build quality of this lens. So it's similar to its big brother, the 28 to 75, in the way it's built. It has a very nice matte black finish and it feels solid enough, similar to its bigger brother. The construction of the lens is plastic, but the mount at the back, it's made of metal, which is a good thing. The 28 to 75 is about 1.2 pounds and this one is just under 1 pound, which makes it a very light lens for gimbal work. So this is a lot lighter than the G-Master 16 to 35 as well. That G-Master lens is about 1.5 pounds and this is just under 1 pound. The zoom ring feels quite smooth actually, and what I really like about this is that the zoom is internal, meaning that the barrel does not extend out as you zoom in. So as you can see here, I am zooming in from 17 to 28 and the size of the barrel stays the same. And this is very useful and very handy for gimbals, especially when you want to zoom in an extra pinch and you don't want to mess up with the balance of that gimbal. This will let you do just that. The focus by wire of this lens is intuitive. It has enough resistance, pretty good. This lens has weather resistance, but it's not weather sealed. So I'll be wary if it's pouring, raining a lot. But if it's just drizzling, I think it should be okay shooting with this out there. The filter size of this lens is 67mm, which is exactly the same as the other 28 to 75 Tamron lens, which makes it really easy to carry the same filters. This lens has some macro capabilities and can focus very closely at about 7.48 inches. One thing that this doesn't have, unlike the Sony lenses, is an autofocus manual focus toggle switch. So you cannot switch that directly on the lens. You have to do that in the body of the camera. So let's talk about autofocus performance. So this lens is not as fast as Sony lenses, but in my experience, it's fast enough to be usable. The autofocus is quite good and it works well pretty much in all autofocus mode, but sometimes it does hunt a little bit. In terms of video, autofocus works quite well with face detection. It is able to track faces very well as you move in and out of the camera. Eye detection in photo mode is actually pretty good as well and is able to lock onto the eye for most of the time. This lens has a variable focusing distance, so at 17mm it focuses as close as 7.48 inches, but when you're zoomed in all the way to 28mm, it focuses at 10.23 inches. Let's talk about sharpness. So I took a few photos just to test the overall sharpness of this lens in photo mode and compared the corners in different focal lengths and apertures. At 17mm at f2.8, this lens is pretty sharp in the center, but you can see that it's a little bit soft around the edges. This is not as apparent in slower apertures at f4, f8, and f11. At f8, it seems like it sharpens in the corners. At 20mm, this lens was pretty sharp all around, and the corners started to be sharper at f4. At 28mm, this lens was pretty sharp all around. You can see from these samples that this lens is not as sharp in the edges, but honestly, I really had to zoom in my computer monitor to notice a difference. And if you're not pixel peeping, it should be fine. The bokeh of this lens is quite nice, but at closer look, you see that there's some little elements or little circles inside those bokeh circles. So bokeh inside a bokeh. So almost like a bokeh inception or something like that. At its widest focal length, distortion is actually quite minimal and it's not bad at all. So having used this lens for about a year now, is this lens worth it? At $899, honestly, it's a very good option if you want a fast aperture wide zoom lens. It's a lot cheaper than the G-Master lens and it's a lot lighter. In terms of sharpness, this lens was pretty sharp overall. It's not as sharp as the Sony G-Master lens based on what I see online, but the image that you get out of this lens is actually very usable. It's also a very good gimbal lens because it zooms internally. The only thing is that it doesn't have a manual switch between autofocus and manual focus, but it's not a big deal for me. And also, if you have been using Sony lenses for a while, it'll take some time to get used to the focus ring as it is reversed, but it's nothing you can't learn, right? So if you're interested in this lens, I'll be leaving a link in the description below so you can go and check it out. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite wide zoom lens is right now. So that is all for today, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. Your support would be greatly appreciated. And if you're already subscribed, thank you so much for being here. That is all, guys. Until next time.